Hey everybody, it's KennedyHawk from the MCM team. We're going to continue our Hero Primer series this week with a video all about another one of the heroes from the X-Men wave, Cyclops. And if you tuned into the Gambit video last week, you knew the reason we're going through the more modern heroes is my local store has agreed to donate a hero pack as a giveaway. So if you tuned into the Gambit video and left a comment on the video telling us your favorite aspect to play with Gambit, you got put into a drawing to win a Gambit pack, and we're going to raffle that off, or, randomize that right now. So, if you're tuning in again, I don't even know how to say this name, to Barely14, please send an email to marvelchampionsmonthly@gmail.com, or I'll be reaching out to you and commenting to you on Facebook or YouTube to get you your free Gambit pack. And if you want to figure out how to win a Cyclops pack, tune in a couple of minutes when we give you the criteria this week to win a copy of Cyclops. So let's get right in and talk about this hero's identity cards. So we have Scott Summers and Alter Ego, hand size of 6, hit points of 10, recovery of 3, and some really awesome abilities. You may include X-Men allies from any aspect in your deck. That is really powerful. We know that allies are the strongest card in the game, and now you have access to more of them than almost anyone else. We have the ability Constant Draining. Action, search your deck for a tactic upgrade and add it to your hand. Now remember, when you search, you're going to have to shuffle your deck, but that is search your deck for any tactic upgrade while in Alter Ego form. So search yourself for exactly the cards you need and put it into your hand. Seems pretty good. We're going to keep moving and look at the hero side. So in hero form, Cyclops has 2 thwart, 1 attack, and 2 defense of the X-Men trait, a really strong trait as we know, with an ability Optic Blast. Action, attack. Spend 1 resource of any type, deal 3 damage to an enemy with an upgrade attached. So you're probably going to be finding those tactic upgrades to place on an enemy so that Cyclops can Optic Blast them. Now that's pretty cool. So last week we talked about Gambit, who's the only Alter Ego to have a thwart action printed on their card. Now we have Cyclops, who has an attack printed directly onto his card. Spend a resource to deal some damage beyond just his normal activation. So he can activate to deal 1, then spend 1 to do 3, so you remove Tough and do the 3, and there might even be more ways to enhance Optic Blast as we go through Cyclops' kit. So what's his main hook? His main hook is multicolor deck building, right? You can include allies of all 4 different aspects. You can have Pixie, Blindfold, Sunfire, and Polaris all on the board for 1 player at the same time without using leadership shenanigans. We also have big money, right? Search your deck for exactly the cards you need means you're going to be searching for expensive cards when you can afford them and cheap cards when you can afford those. So it's not exactly big money, but I think it's like the right money. There's a lot of recursion and search in Cyclops' kit that we'll talk about here in a little bit. And then enemy upgrades, so upgrades you play on an enemy to do some effect. And we'll go through exactly what those cards are, but there's a bunch of them in Cyclops' kit. So the deck building uniqueness on Cyclops is to include any X-Men ally from any aspect in your deck. But what I want to know, if you would like to win a copy of Cyclops by next week, so today is March 21st, so before midnight on the 27th, the end of the 27th, but before the 28th, you need to put in the comments a tactic card from an aspect that you enjoy playing with Cyclops, and tell me what that tactic card is so people can see what different tactics you can use within Cyclops just by looking at the comments. So put that in the comments on YouTube to win the chance to win a Cyclops hero pack. Alright, so let's get into Cyclops' kit exactly. Key cards, again, we have another hero where it depends. Depends on what kind of deck you're going to build, what cards are key. And I think that's actually really good, right? It makes, saying what his strongest cards are difficult for me, but it's good for all of us, right? There's no longer heroes where you're like, well, these 5 cards are bad, and then here's the 10 cards you want to focus on. It's here's 15 really good cards. Now you build your deck to figure out which ones to enhance. But if there's one card that I think is key to Cyclops' kit, it's this Tactical Brilliance. So this is a 2-cost event. Hero action thwart, remove 3 threat from a scheme. Choose a tactic card in your discard pile and add it to your hand. So not a tactic upgrade. So now we have in Alter Ego the ability to find any tactic upgrade we want and in our deck, and then hero form the ability to choose a tactic upgrade event, support, whatever from your discard pile and add it to your hand. That's really, really strong. And we'll talk about why when we get into deck building. But I think that this lets him recur the tactics that he needs to recur without flipping. It also lets you play with your aspect pool quite a bit. I think there's a couple other cards that are pretty key to Cyclops' kit, depending on what you're doing. So one, if you're going to focus on his Optic Blast, Cyclops actually doesn't have a resource generator outside of this Ruby Quartz Visor, which is exhaust this card, generate a energy resource for your Optic Blast ability. The attack gains piercing and range, so your Optic Blast now ignores Retaliate, it gets rid of Tough, and it's paid for each turn, which is really, really strong. So if you're going to build something that focuses on putting upgrades on the villain and dealing damage with Optic Blast, Ruby Quartz Visor is really a key card. Another one is in multiplayer, Field Commander. You take the first turn during the player phase. Each Cyclops upgrade attached to a minion loses the temporary keyword, so that can be a really annoying thing as the Cyclops player. In a 4-player game, if you're the 4th player, it can be very difficult to get your upgrades out, your temporary upgrades out, before they fall off, or before they're useless, before other players get to take their turn. So here you take the first turn, you are not the first player. So if something is a first player action or something happens to the first player, it doesn't happen to you. You just go before everyone else so you can place all your upgrades on the board and, really have a good time with your hero kit. So strong cards depending on if you're playing multiplayer and focusing on putting upgrades on minions or if you're planning to use your visor a lot. Again, so if you're planning to focus on those upgrades, but you should to use Cyclops as advisor, he's got 6 tactics in kit with those upgrades. So we have Practice Defense, which is attached to an enemy, max 1 per enemy. Temporary, which we'll talk about in a minute, that means it disappears at the end of the round. Attached enemy gets -1 attack. This is great for defending, right? Throw this in a villain in a 4-player game, that's -1 attack on each villain activation. Exploit Weakness, increase the amount of damage attached enemy takes from each attack by 1. Again, really strong. Not going to affect non-damage sources, or non-attack damage sources, but still a really strong card. And then Priority Target, 0 cost. When the attached enemy is defeated, the player who defeated it draws 2 cards. I'm a little bit more lukewarm on this card. It works great if you have lots of minions coming out, but a lot of times you're paying 1 card to give someone else 2, so there's like only a 1-card advantage, and it's kind of limited over who gets to defeat the minion, how you pass those cards. But still a great card for turning on a lot of Cyclops' abilities. So you're going to get 2 of each of these upgrades, obviously very key. You're going to be recurring a lot of those using Cyclops' flip down ability unless you have other upgrades to target, and using that Tactical Brilliance to throw it back into your hand. Alright, and then the other cards in his kit, we have a 1 of Phoenix, his signature ally, who's a 2 thwart, 2 attack, 3 health ally. Obviously very strong. Psionic trait, X-Men trait, very, very good. Response, after Phoenix enters play, choose a Cyclops card in your discard pile and add it to your hand. So if you lose your visor or you lose your leadership, you can throw those back into your hand, and that can be very, very powerful. You could even throw those upgrades back into your hand. So again, a lot of recursion in Cyclops' kit. We've got 2 copies of Ricochet Beam, which is an attack superpower, hero action, deal 3 damage to an enemy, and then deal 3 damage to an enemy with an upgrade attached. That can be the same enemy. You can even defeat a guard minion and then deal 3 damage to the villain who has an upgrade attached. So a very versatile event, 2 for 6 damage overall, if you have an upgrade out on an enemy that you want to target. Full Blast, when you would use your Optic Blast ability, Exhaust Cyclops, this attack deals 8 damage and gains overkill, so you're increasing that damage. This is only a 1 of, so it could be a key card, but you only get 1 of them. If there were a lot more of them, it would be very, very strong. So, really good card, but not key just because you can't reliably draw it. It doesn't have the tactic. The only thing that can really get that back into your hand is Phoenix. Alright, so our hero overview. His weakness, he's a bit flip dependent, and a lot of his key cards are 1-ofs, right? Especially the visor and his taking the first turn ability. His strengths are that he has a really powerful deck building hook. He takes, Gamora's deck building hook to another level by letting you include the most powerful cards in the game. His powerful cards in his kit, and all the powerful cards have multiple copies, right? So the Ricochet Beam, the Tactical Brilliance, all those upgrades, you get multiple copies of, so you're not like constantly, once you're set up, digging for these 1-of cards. And he's just a strong all-around character. He doesn't have, the 2/2/2 stat line, but with his Ricochet Beam, he basically has better than that. So, makes him pretty strong. Lots of card draw. So let's do some strategy nuance with Cyclops. Let's talk about recursion. There's lots of recursion in Cyclops' kit, right? In his alter ego, you can grab a tactic upgrade. So pay attention, it's upgrade, so you can't grab supports, you can't grab events, and things like that with the tactic trait, but you can grab your 6 Cyclops upgrades, or any other aspect upgrades that you might include, which we'll talk about in the deck building part of the video. Tactical Brilliance is remove 3 threat from scheme and choose a tactic card. So now it is not limited to upgrades. You can use this to grab your Cyclops upgrades, and often you will, but you can grab things like Last Stand, you can grab things like Regroup that are really powerful from aspects and plop them back into your hand to use over and over and over again. And since you have 3 Tactical Brilliance, you can quite easily set up a deck where you're just recycling a Regroup every turn. And then Phoenix, after Phoenix, just choose a Cyclops card in your discard. So a lot of times I get into this mindset where I only use Phoenix to grab these tactics as well. Phoenix isn't grab a tactic, so you can't grab aspect cards with her, but you can grab any Cyclops upgrade. You can even chain Phoenix into a tactical brilliance to go find a tactics card of an aspect. So there are, some tricks to get around with your recursion and searching. Let's talk about Cyclops' Optic Blast. So again, Optic Blast is an attack, so if you want to clear stun, you can spend 1 resource to pay the cost to negate the effect and clear stun. It also means you can't use this while stunned, so be careful with that. Again, the Ruby Quartz Visor only works for Optic Blast, and Optic Blast can only be used if there's an enemy with an upgrade attached. You basically need a target to target, right? So you will need to plan ahead to use Optic Blast. And then finally, again, with Ricochet Beam, deal 3 damage to an enemy, deal 3 damage to an enemy with an upgrade attached. That can be the same enemy. I've seen some people think that they have to be distinct enemies. They do not. So you can just deal 6 to something if it has an upgrade. All right, let's talk about temporary. So the definition of temporary is in Cyclops' insert. A card with temporary must be discarded from play at the end of round. So you basically discard it after the villain phase. So when you place these temporary upgrades onto minions or onto villains, they're going to stick for 1 round. So if you're the first player using Field Commander, they'll be there for all the other players' turn and the villain phase, and then they go away. So you kind of want to plan when you play the right upgrade at the right time based on that. Also note with Field Commander, upgrades attached to minions lose the temporary keyword, but not upgrades attached to villains. So that's only going to affect your minions. So pay attention to where you're playing upgrades. That's where the real decision making comes in with Cyclops. All right, so let's get into our aspect primer. For aggression, there's a ton of really fun hooks. I think aggression's probably my favorite aspect with Cyclops. We've got Plan of Attack from Gamora's, which lets us search for an attack event, and it's a tactic, so we can search that out with our thwart event, flip down, use it to go find the perfect attack event. You won't be able to use that attack event until the next turn, so your mileage may vary, but pretty fun event nonetheless. We've got Boot Camp. Obviously, you're going to have a ton of allies, so buffing their attack is really, really good. And we've got Attack Training that only works on X-Men allies, but luckily you're going to have a ton of those. It gives them +1 attack and +2 hit points. We have another tactic upgrade in aggression, Counterattack from Black Widow. After you take any amount of damage from an attack, discard Counterattack. I haven't had much success with this with Cyclops, mainly because I have so many allies I'm usually chumping with them, so I'm not taking damage. But the fact that it's an upgrade tactic makes me really want to try it out more in Cyclops. Obviously, we've got all of our X-Men allies, so Psylocke and Sunfire from Wolverine, Magic and Wolverine from Mutant Genesis, and Dust from Cyclops' pack himself. For Justice, we've got lots of interesting tactics to think about. We've got Global Logistics and Homeland Intervention, right? There's that meme that Cyclops is a cop, so you can even include a beat cop in there to be cheeky. But you can make him a shield, person with a bunch of shield support from Sinister Motives and other shield portions and packages throughout the game's history. Global Logistics can be really strong to know what's coming up in your deck. It can also let you know what's coming up in the villain deck, so you can make the best decisions with where to place your upgrades. We've got Mission Training from the Phoenix pack, and then again, all of our X-Men allies. So Marvel Girl, Banshee, Dazzler, Bishop, Blindfold, the things you would expect. X-Men allies are good in an X-Men deck. All right, from Protection, we've got 3 interesting tactics to talk about here. So we've got Perseverance from Wasp/Mutant Genesis. After you change forms, give yourself a tough status card. Now remember, when you're an alter ego, you can't search out tactic events, only upgrades. But you can remove upgrades from your deck so that it's better suited for Perseverance when you draw up to your hand size, and then play Perseverance when you flip into hero form so that you can soak an attack. We've got Pin Down, which comes in Cyclops' pack itself. Really good at letting minions sit out there to set up big Optic Blasts or whatever you need. And then I've recently been playing with a deck with Stand Together, which is a little awkward because it requires an Avenger and Guardian character in solo. But the fact that you can recur this with Tactical Brilliance means you can set up a deck where, if you have enough resources, you're planning to play Stand Together every turn, right? And just eliminate the villains attacked and play Tactical Brilliance and just slowly deal damage to them. It's been pretty fun to play. I wouldn't say it's an S tier deck, but it's definitely, Stand Together does have the same acronym as S tier. But it's a pretty fun deck. So I'll post it in the comments once I get it a little bit more out of the training wheels. And then we've got, obviously, our X-Men allies. We have the most X-Men allies in Protection, so a ton of X-Men allies here. 2 from Mutant Genesis, 3 from Rogue, and 1 from Cyclops. All right, and finally for leadership, we've got lots of good tactics here. We've got a rapid response from Black Widow. Everybody knows how good rapid response is. We don't have to talk about that. And it's an upgrade, so you get it on both ends. We've got Last Stand. I think you often pump so many allies out with Cyclops that you're discarding allies. So to be able to use Last Stand to really get some oomph out of that ally is really, really strong. To me, my X-Men, obviously, play only if your identity is the X-Men trait. Go find an X-Men, put it into play, and then return it to your hand after you drop to your hand size. Really great for recursion and getting things out of the way in your deck. We've got Coordinated Attack and Danger Room Training, both from Cyclops' pack, which are really good. And I really like playing Cyclops with Regroup, especially in multiplayer from Drax's pack. So when an ally is defeated by an enemy attack, return it to owner's hand instead of discarding it. When the round ends, discard this card. So this card basically has temporary itself, right? But what's really fun about this is you can use Tactical Brilliance over and over again to make sure you're always playing a regroup, which is really, really strong. And obviously all of the X-Men allies and other tactics like Lead from the Front and Beast and stuff like that are good too. And then finally from basics, I really like Assess the Situation from Ant-Man. It helps you get up to the right hand size so that you can play some of those powerful cards as Cyclops. Obviously, Professor X is really strong in a character that likes to flip and has a lot of alter ego economy. And X-Mansion is going to be great for healing characters while you're flipped down, just like Mutant Education is going to be great for cycling Cyclops cards back into your deck so you can find them at the right time. X-Gene from Rogue is a great resource generator. We've got Utopia, Danger Room, and Cerebro. I think all of the X-Men basic support is some of the strongest in the game, and it is strongest in Cyclops' deck, in my opinion. All right, look for some out of X-Men combos. There's some cool Voltron characters you can make that aren't X-Men, that with honorary X-Men, you can basically abuse them with Cyclops. So someone like Bug from the Guardians wave can become an honorary X-Men and get an Energy Spear and a Danger Room Training and a Sidearm. And if you have a boot camp out, that's a lot of investment, but it's a lot of things out of the way in your deck to thin your deck, and now you have a character that attacks for 6 plus piercing every turn and heals himself. That's really strong. Like, that's going to win you the game, right? So look for combos like that. I've been tinkering one where I take Cyclops and make him or put him into the Web Warriors, right? Get a bunch of Web Warriors into play, and then use Spider UK with Protective Training and Honorary X-Men to Hangar Bay, defend twice, and then flip down with X-Mansion. Since Spider UK is now an X-Men character, we can heal him slowly over time. It's been pretty fun with limited success, you know? So look for combos outside of the X-Men too. Just because you have that X-Men deck building trait doesn't mean you shouldn't include non-X-Men characters, I guess is what I'm trying to say. All right, for theme, wow, this is Gambit. You can tell I reused my slides. Cyclops has been in the comics since X-Men #1 in 1963, and he's a mainstay and leader of the team. He's been in almost every iteration of X-Men I have ever read. He's often a tactic leader and pushes the team to their limits with his strategy and commands, which is well represented in his kit, obviously. I'm a little sad we didn't get the classic 90s Cyclops look with his hair poking through the top of his costume. But, you know, we did get a well-rounded Cyclops look. I really like the art in Cyclops' kit. It's very concise. It's very neat. It represents one version of Cyclops instead of many versions like some of the other characters we've seen in the X-Men wave. So big props on this character for theme. All right, on to our patented ratings archery scale. For power level, Cyclops is a 5, hands down. He's got so much economy, so many good cards, and such an interesting deck building hook that it lets him build the strongest decks possible. He's just straight up a strong character. Decision making, I have him at a 4, and I almost had him at a 5 here. But I do feel like sometimes he goes into autopilot mode where you're just returning the same card over and over again and running through the same cycles. There is a lot of fun decision making on which upgrade do I play and which upgrade do I put on which character and which ally do I play because I have so many in my hand. So he's not like a 3, a 2, or a 1 in decision making, but I think that he could become a little bit better with more cards to make more decisions. And I think he could grow there as more cards come out. All right, aspect viability, obviously a 5. There's a lot of ally attachments in the different upgrades and different things you can do with allies in the different aspects that we don't get to see unless you have one of these interesting deck building hooks, and Cyclops has the perfect one for his kit and for this wave. Thematics, I do put him at a 5 despite the 90s costume being missing. This is just classic straight up Cyclops, can't get any better than this, honestly. And fun factor, I have him at a 5. I love allies, I love X-Men. Cyclops is right up my alley, right? I like that he gets to flip, but has the ability to flip because he has enough allies on the board to keep the threat at a reasonable level, and he has good incentive to flip other than just the +1 hand size from his hand size. He also gets +2 from searching out an upgrade twice, so you effectively get 4 cards per flip instead of 2, which makes it very enticing. So he is a 4.8 overall. Oh gosh, my chat box is in the way. Let's move that over here. How does he stack up against the other heroes? So he's at a 4.8, so he's right up there with Iron Man, Cap, Gambit, and Cyclops. We have some really, really fun heroes in this wave. So you can see we're still slightly tilted towards the upper end. I might have to recalibrate my scale or something, but eventually we'll get to some heroes that are probably below a 3, at least in my opinion. But I think Cyclops is an S tier to A tier hero. When we do a tier list here in a couple of weeks, we'll see where he ends up, but I think that he is pretty high up on my scale. And that's that. So that is our Cyclops primer video. Again, remember, if you can put something in the comments by midnight at the end of the day on March 27th, letting me know what tactic card you like from what aspect to play with Cyclops and why, that'll get included in the comments at the bottom of the video, and you'll get entered to win a copy of the Cyclops Hero Pack. So thanks for tuning in. Have a great week, and keep thwarting those villains.